Put this one on to not mess too much with the audio. All right. Awesome. We are live.
We are live. Ready?
Yes, we are. Yes,
okay.
I'm ready. Welcome to this second session here at the NSCUG, and thanks again for West Monroe Partners for having us here in their shiny conference room. Fabulous internet access and pretty good coffee too, so I'm a happy camper.
Me as well. I'm Amy.
And I'm Johan, and we'll be your host for the next 50 minutes or so. Topic is Windows 10 and ConfigMgr updates. And as usual, we absolutely love questions. So if you have any, please use the chat function in the live stream event. It's just to the right on the stream, so you should be able to ask any questions there. And we will happily accept questions on Twitter as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is also the preferred way to contact us.
Yes.
Yeah.
The most preferred way.
The most preferred way.
Yeah.
All right. So.
A little bit about us.
Yeah. We're here in Chicago.
Uh-huh. It snowed last night.
It's unbelievable. It's almost May and it's snowing. I was like, really?
Yeah. So we were this close to moving to Florida right before Ignite of last year, and in the last minute we got outbid on the property that we were looking at, and we were like, let's just stay in Chicago, things will be fine. And this has been like the worst winter and the worst spring ever. So yeah.
Sea is better.
Yeah.
It's warm and nice.
Florida.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
As with the Twitter stuff, we are also available on LinkedIn and to some extent on Facebook as well.
Some extent, yes.
Well, I use Facebook for actually business stuff. Amy is...
I do not think that a professional person should use Facebook for professional development. I think that Facebook is a place, especially now, where you're...
Post your fun stuff?
Yeah, just fun. I can't say the word because we're all professionals here, but it's a place to do poo-poo posting is what we'll call it. So don't do anything real on Facebook.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right. So back to the agenda here. It's pretty down to earth. We have a few bullets here we're going to cover. Basically 10 minutes on each. Yeah. More or less.
More or less.
Shorthand story. The latest changes. It's been around since Windows 10, 17, or 9 came along. That's where we want to be.
Yeah.
All right. Get started?
Let's take it away.
All right. Never heard of it.
Yeah, this thing that caused a little bit of a fuss at Ignite last year would be the first topic, Windows Autopilot. Windows Autopilot is a feature that was introduced last fall. If you're not familiar with it, I think that the speculation and perhaps a little bit of mismarketing around it was that it was going to replace OSD as we know it. Certainly there are a lot of things changing as organizations shift to the cloud and have that cloud-first mentality and stop doing things the old traditional way, meaning stop spending a lot of time and resources on creating a golden image with a ton of baked-in applications. Certainly that's changing because we have a need to deploy machines faster than ever before, particularly because BYOD has entered the scenario, or CYOD, choose your own device. So the bottom line is that IT shops need a way to take a device that's brand new to the organization and bring it under management right away, as well as simplify that out-of-box experience for the end user. So what they see when they first log in, or when they first power up before they log in. So this is where Windows Autopilot comes into play. The next would be the MDM Migration Analysis Tool, or MMAT. And what MMAT allows you to do, and we'll demo this in a minute, is take your, I hate to say it, legacy group policy and have a path forward to start managing your devices in the cloud with Intune. So you can look at all of your policies, and certainly you should take the time to clear out anything that you used to use to manage XP, clear out anything that you used to use to manage Windows 7, but also look at what policies are holding you back from cloud adoption. See how you can manage your devices, or maybe you're trying to control too much because you got a little bit how do we say it, out of hand and locking down that end user experience. So you're actually blocking productivity because you're trying to put too much control on that device. So this tool allows you to have that path forward. And then the shiny ADMX templates and security baselines that get released.
Yeah, with every new Windows version, once or twice, depending on how good they are in the beginning. There have been a few bugs sometimes when they release a new version. So.
Yeah. And the Windows Admin Center, which was formerly known as Project Honolulu, is actually generally available now under the name Windows Admin Center. So this is something that we'll take a look at as well.
Yep. And of course, we have the good old
RSAT tools.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay. Demo time.
It is demo time. So the first thing that we will go over is Windows Autopilot. So I'm going to go here into my Intune Blade in my Azure tenant. And you just go into Windows Enrollment. So this is actually in preview, what I'm showing you here. First of all, the second thing that you should know is that Windows Autopilot itself is something that it's available to play with right now, but it's not, it is and it isn't generally available. And I say that because Lenovo just made a commitment in 2019 to be the first OEM vendor to participate in this scenario. I mean, certainly right now I can gather hardware hashes myself from brand new devices or devices that are already out in the wild in my organization. But we have the first OEM vendor that stepped up and said, we believe in this and we'll help with this. Anyhow, if I go into, I'm in the wrong spot, so go back out, lost for a minute. Enrollment, Windows enrollment, I got lost for a minute. What could possibly go wrong in a live demo? The first thing that I want to show you is deployment profiles. You can also do this in the Store for Business, and you should do this in the Store for Business if you're using a third-party MDM solution such as VMware AirWatch. But the first thing that you'd want to do is create a profile, and what a profile will do will dictate that end user experience. So you give a profile a name. Every profile deserves a name. Description is optional. But then you want to join Azure AD, and then you start configuring things. So do you want your end user to see a EULA or not? So if you show it, you obviously get some tooltips taken away, but I'm going to hide it. You can see what does it mean to skip the EULA. This just opens up a new page for you so that you or the legal department needs to look at this. If somebody needs to sign off on this, you see exactly what you're getting when you have your end users skip this. Privacy settings, and then again, specify whether end users see those privacy settings or not. Hide or show. So if it shows, and that means that's another step during UBI that the end user has to stop and give input. I'm going to hide it. The next would be, what type of user account do I want my end user to have? Are they going to enroll their device and bring it under management, and they are as essentially an administrator on this box, or am I going to have them be a standard user? And this is where you need to determine what's best for your organization, but as always, have your end users function under the principle of least privilege. So if they don't need to be an admin on the box, certainly don't allow them to be at this point. Then you save it and create it, and then this profile becomes available. The next thing that you have to look at is your devices. I've actually already pre-staged some devices in here where you see that they're not assigned. Simply show that by looking at that column, not assigned, under the profile status column. You can also reassign profiles to these devices that are in here. What you can't do that you can do in the Store for Business is remove profiles altogether. So I'm just going to pick on a VM that I've imported, and I'm going to assign a profile, and I can select my, my new profile, and then it's assigned. Another thing that you need to know about this experience is that when you upload your devices using Intune, it actually takes a little bit of time for this to process, and you'll see a banner across the top that says, hey, this is processing, and it could take up to 10 minutes. You do get an elapsed time. If you do this in the store for business, it's near instant. And by near instant, I mean it's like a browser refresh away unless something has gone horribly wrong. You also have troubleshooting options available to you. So if something fails, you get an error code, and it'll link to a page that gives you, hey, these are the common error codes. This is what could be going wrong. Something as simple as this device has already uploaded, or there's something wrong with the format of the CSV file that you've uploaded. And if you want to know how to grab a hardware hash to create this file, you Google for Niehaus and Autopilot. This takes you to the PowerShell gallery, and this is actually 1.1 of the script. Let's go back out, see if I can get 1.3 to show up. Actually, I can get it from Twitter.
You can go back in the path also.
Teach me how PowerShell gallery works.
Yeah, skip the version.
Skip the version. So don't type in 1.3.
That probably works also.
How to use the internet.
Yes. We'll have a course after.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So anyhow, you download a script, you install it. You can actually run the script locally. You can run it against remote computers. They just have to have remote management enabled. You should also be able to run PowerShell in your environment, so that is a requirement. Alternatively, you could, if you have ConfigMgr Current Branch, you can use hardware inventory to grab these hardware hashes. My bit of advice here, if you're doing this, is to make sure that if you're gathering this yourself, name the output of the CSV file that you're creating something that lets you know what computer it is that you ran it against. Because if we go to my autopilot folder, this is what you get when you just run the script. And let's make this bigger. And don't specify anything. So unless you have your device serial numbers memorized, or hardware hash somehow memorized, you're not going to actually know what computer it is that you've gathered this information against. And this is that little talk that I keep having with people that are also testing around autopilot. Well, why do you care about the computer name? So I've always argued, you know, this should return computer name, and it should actually be ignored when it's imported, but admins need to know what computer this is if you're seeing it in a report. And this is why, because you don't know unless you have this feature memorized, the serial number. Yeah. So that makes things a little bit tricky.
Yeah, sure does.
Anyhow, we did a session yesterday with MVP days on autopilot, so we're not going to spend a ton more time demoing this. You can check out that session if you just go to the MVP days website and their YouTube channel as well. It'll be posted there pretty soon. So I wanted to move along and talk about MMAT. So with MMAT, you can get this from GitHub, and my advice here is to Google for Microsoft MMAT. I had if I just search for MMAT, I had a bit of a hard time finding it, but I threw Microsoft in the front, and then it showed up. So anyhow, here it is available on GitHub. It does have some requirements, specifically with older operating systems, that you have to have the RSAT tools not only installed, but available, and that would be the group policy module and the Active Directory module. Because if you, let me full screen this so I can show you, if you run this against a Windows 7 machine that doesn't have that enabled, then you get a bunch of red. And the red is just telling me, hey, whoops, hey, you don't actually have things installed that you need to have installed. And red is no fun in PowerShell. It makes you feel very not shiny. Anyhow, it's really simple. Once you have these prerequisites installed, you just, again, have to set your PowerShell execution policy. You can do it as a one-time thing, or just change the execution policy and change it back. But you just run a PowerShell script. This MDM migration analysis tool, you obviously have to run it from the directory that it's saved in, or somehow tell your script to go look there to run it. And then you want to have these switches collect the GPO reports and run the analysis tool. What that does is it saves to a folder. I just sort it by date modified, so I ran this the other day, and these are the output files that I got. specifically, hello mouse, nice to see you today. I get an HTML output that tells me what I can use in modern management or as a CSP or however you want to call it, depending on your MDM platform. But hey, all of this stuff that I have configured, and it even shows me OS version and the path to set this as a custom setting if it's not actually available already as a default or out-of-the-box setting. But then it starts to get into some tricky things, and this is towards the bottom. So here's where it's red. So these things that I have set, they aren't supported by MDM. So I would have to make the decision, do I halt my MDM migration and wait for Microsoft to add in support for this? Because they are adding in support nearly every day, I would say, for legacy settings to be able to be under the MDM umbrella. But sometimes things are set that just really aren't necessary anymore. And that's where we get into that scenario where what kind of admin are we trying to be? Somebody who wants to have a ton of control, super granular control over a box that may not be necessary, and I'm actually really blocking end user productivity because I say every machine has to be this way, and I'm not really caring about what the business use is for this machine. I just want a blanket configuration for everybody.
Yeah, also if you come to an organization that has been around for a while, most of their policies has actually been created back in 10, 15 years ago for scenarios where users typically were local admins and you use group policies as a way to prevent them from doing something really, really stupid. Now, these days, they are no longer admins and there are less need for those type of policies. And do an overhaul, start over with group policies when it comes to Windows 10 because there is so much junk out there that is absolutely no good.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I want to drive home with this as you're thinking about that migration to the cloud is really a lot of what you said, that organizations, especially ones that I've worked with, are unfortunately a little bit stuck in doing things the old way because the old way worked very well for a very specific purpose at that time. And they keep trying to carry over the same configuration and that same lockdown mentality into a modern workplace. And I think time after time, it's shown that if you allow your end users to work the way that they can work most productively, and I'm not saying don't manage them and don't prevent them from doing stupid things, I'm just saying enable them to use tools that they want to use rather than locking everything down and not caring about how each department or each business unit would need to use an operating system. Yep. I think that the more control you try to take over a device rather than thinking about how can I move into the cloud and be productive, I think that you're going to see your business is just going to suffer in the end. So start thinking about doing things modern and start thinking about what configurations are necessary for security or for consistent branding rather than thinking, I have to have the start menu this exact way and I have to have these exact things penned and they can't right click on this or they can't move this folder over here. That stuff doesn't really matter in every scenario.
So that was obviously a little bit about cloud management updates. And Microsoft is adding a lot of resources to convince organizations to go that way for management. But they are also developing local resources. So Project Honolulu that you mentioned before actually got a real name, the Windows Admin Center. And I kind of like Honolulu better because it sounds warm and beachy and it's nice. But Windows Admin Center it is. And if I jump over to my demo machine here, this is what it looks like. And the fun part, if you run this on Server 2016, well, you can't run it by default because it doesn't work with Internet Explorer. So you have to install another browser. So you need to install Chrome or something else. In this case, I install Chrome. And the first thing you do, you start to add in your various servers that you have in your environment. It can be just one by one for a text file, whatever you need to do, you can import them here, your servers. And once you have a server imported, you can simply click that server. It looks basically like a web version of Server Manager, but you get a lot of information about this machine directly. And this is real time, this is instant, and this is pretty convenient to have all this information. For example, if you want, you can do, we had a PowerShell in the session before. If I want to do some PowerShell to this server, I can open remote PowerShell directly to this box. So I have to type in my credentials, apparently. When you like this. So this is obviously very convenient if you want to do some ad hoc work in PowerShell on the box. They also added in remote desktop, and that's something I spent about 3-4 hours last night troubleshooting why does it not work. So you can see here, remote desktops are not allowed to this computer. Yes, they are. I can use the remote desktop client and connect to it. I know they are. But I enable them through group policy, and apparently Windows Admin Center, this version does not like it. So when I connect to another box where I actually did enable it manually and go to remote desktop and wait patiently, then it will happily connect here in a little bit. So this is a combination about, okay, I have to type in the credentials. We'll do that, thank you. The right password also would help. You can avoid all of this by simply configuring Kerberos delegation so that you don't have to refill passwords like this. But as you can see, this is a regular remote desktop session for this box. And you have on the left pane here, you have all the usual stuff you expect to be able to do remotely, but in a web page. So when you install this, you can install it in a gateway mode like I have here on a server, or in a desktop mode on a client where you use the same tool to connect to. So pretty cool stuff. I recommend downloading it. It's 40 meg download, give or take. No big deal. Just a regular MSI install. Life is good. Let's get on or continue with 1803 updates. Okay.
So first of all, Johan, where is Windows 10 1803? What is going on?
It's more like it's 1804 or 5.
1800 never, it feels like.
Yeah, I think somebody screwed up bigly somewhere.
yeah. It's a little bit late. A little pro tip if you didn't already know, what I do on my devices, I only have one brand new device at home. And the way that Microsoft rolls out new operating systems, they target newest first, most compatible first, and then older later, kind of in a stage rollout. How you should do it really in your own organization as well in rings. I know for a fact that this laptop will take a little bit of time to get that update, because that's what I experienced about a year ago. So what I've started doing is placing my work devices in the Insider Preview ring, but doing release ready. Mm-hmm. Because I actually thought this was an April Fool's joke. No joke that Microsoft was like totally punning me on April Fool's Day. It was, hey, you're ready for 1803. And I was like, no, I'm not, but I'm going to reboot anyway. And that was on my super old Surface device. And then sure enough, by Patch Tuesday, then this device got it as well. So I'm like, okay, I'm on 1803 now. And I'm still getting fixes as they come out, but there's obviously no more features to come out. So I'm seeing essentially what I would see if this was RTM. Yeah. So I'm a bit curious still why it's so delayed. I saw the security updates that released just now for 17134, that build, but we'll see. Some of it will probably tell us. Yeah. All right, let's get going. So we're going to break this into two sections, the first being the consumer features of interest, the next being IT Pro features. But this is really taken with a grain of salt because it's not RTM. Obviously, some of this may not be true. There may be one of these features that's blocking that rollout. We don't know, even as MVPs, at least in our group, we don't have that kind of access to that inside info to tell you. So we just picked a few features that we thought were really worth mentioning. And I have a few blog posts as well to show, especially on the IT Pro side. But here's just a few things. Yeah. So timelines, first out. That's just going back in time with stuff you've been doing. I'll show you that in a little bit. Focus assist, you've been testing. Been using that quite regularly. It used to be called quiet hours. Yeah. Cortana skills. So Cortana's got skills. But there's actually a list that you can go to see what the current skills are, and you can make your own skills if you want.
So I can turn on the Christmas light now with Cortana also.
Christmas lights, oh boy.
Yeah. They were connected to Alexa before.
Yep. Yeah. Nearby sharing, sometimes called SwiftPair. I think it had that name for a while as well, or maybe that was a different platform that had that. But just the ability to near share files for computers that have it enabled, or to know about it to lock it down.
Also Microsoft AirDrop, basically.
Yes. Yeah. My People. Obviously, this isn't new, but it's something that you should know about. Okay, somebody on the Windows team is about to cry. I'm sorry, but I feel that My People is like the poor man's version of Teams. Yeah. I love Microsoft Teams, but maybe you don't have a license for it, or maybe you're a consumer. So maybe that's why you don't have a license for it, and you still want that way to, within one application,
connect with people?
Yeah, have ways to connect with people.
That's about right. And then the ID Pro features.
Changes in delivery optimization.
Yes. Some enhancements, some additional PowerShell commandlets in this one, absolutely. Then we have this one that hasn't been really released yet. There was actually floating around on Twitter for a while, a download link to both the ISO and the 80K setup. So if you want to play around with the preview of it, 17133, you can actually absolutely find that link and start to download it.
So if I want to know what's broken before it gets released, I can prepare for it.
I have hopes for 80K. They did a good job last time with 1709.
They did, yeah.
Just that the track record before 1709 wasn't very good. But let's see what happens here in 1803. Yeah, tons of updates.
And settings, yeah.
We'll walk you through them in a demo later. So.
Yeah. Changes to how you manage your devices.
Yeah. And of course, our usual recommendation to, if you're not part of this yet, your organization is not part of this yet, Insider Preview for Business is very shiny. It says demo.
It does say demo.
Yeah.
You're up first.
All right. Timeline feature. Let me spin up a VM that I have with one of the previews. I have a lot of VMs here.
You want to switch over to mine and you can talk about it? Here's mine.
That's pretty quick.
Okay.
But thank you.
Okay.
So the timeline feature you can either access through this little tiny icon here next to Cortana, or just regular Windows and tab. And that will simply give you a timeline of what we've been doing. So I only installed this VM yesterday, so I only have from earlier today, meaning like 2 a.m. this morning. But as you can see, there is a scroll wheel to the right where you can actually go back and forth in time and see what you've been working on. In this case, I was drawing a picture in Paint. I was very proud of that one. Yeah. But this is it. This is like a history. You can simply see what you've been doing. That's the timeline feature.
Awesome. So Focus Assist, it's not new. But first thing that we're going to do is go into the Settings app and look at notifications. I have notifications turned off as a whole because I'm just over them. But I'm going to say this really slow and a little bit louder. If you are presenting and you are a business person, or you are presenting at a conference, or you are on a Skype call, or you are using your computer in any way that somebody else is going to see your screen, Focus Assist is your friend because it turns off, well, it used to turn off all notifications. What it does now is it gives you, it still passes through priority notifications, which is what led to me actually turning notifications off altogether, because silly Microsoft Teams would get through the rules that I had set up, and I would still get notifications when I'd be presenting. Anyhow, you can turn it on by going into your Action Center, or you can just go to the Settings app, and you can just say, hey, find a setting, Focus Assist, Settings. So off, priority only, alarms only, and then you can set rules about how things get through or when they get through, and also getting a summary of what you missed while Focus Assist was on. So notifications will show up over here, but they won't actually take over your screen, which is nice. So the next, Cortana skills. So really what I'm going to say about this, I'm not really a big Cortana adopter yet. I do like Cortana. Just full disclosure, we have a bunch of Amazon Echoes and Dots in our home, and that's what we chose to adopt at our home. But I'm really waiting for the day when all of these technologies work really well together, other than making the joke of telling one to tell the other to do something, really integrating all these assistants. Anyhow, if you want to see what Cortana skills are available, you just search for Cortana skills, and there's a nice documented page of what's available. Some of them are really consumer focused, and then some of them can really get really smart for productivity, such as Cortana reminding you of things in your calendar, reading you your emails, things like that. The next one to talk about is SwiftBear. SwiftBear or Microsoft AirDrop. Oops.
By sharing.
Yep, thank you. Is actually, okay, try again. This setting is accessed through shared experience settings, which makes absolutely no sense to me at all. But here's where you find it. So turn it on, or set a policy as an admin to turn it off, which I highly, highly, highly recommend, especially for devices that wander. I certainly wouldn't want Kathy from finance to take her laptop to Starbucks to work on payroll, and have somebody be able to drop her a bad file just because she has it turned on. And I just picked on Kathy because that's my mom's name. So anyhow, turn it on, turn it off, and then you can do things like in Edge. For example, I could share this page with you by near share, or via people, because we talked about my people as well. If I wanted to share that link with you, it just opens up the last way that I interacted with you. So I'll just send you an email about Cortana skills.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. So did that also cover the settings updates? No.
So going into IT Pro features, the first and I would say most important thing that you need to know is that when you get into settings, you'll see that everything's a little bit smaller. The icons are smaller, they're aligned a little bit better. We don't have any new icons at the top level, but it does look a little bit different and a little bit better for sure, especially on smaller screens. I felt like on this laptop before, when I was on 1709 and even earlier, just felt like it was unless I had it full screen, it was really hard to look at everything because it was just like so big and in my face. When you start navigating, home is actually a house. So that's
Very
exciting.
Nice.
So you can find your way home quite easily. It used to just be a settings gear icon in 1709. Another thing to look at under update and security is that device encryption has moved in here. So you can get into tells you to go into the control panel, but it's a little bit new. So there's that. Sound settings have changed. Sound. Audio settings. So you have a little bit more options. I really wanted to show you was, I feel like this is just where I'm at. So there's a full list of some changes. So if we would go to YouTube, for example, and I have system audio muted, but if I was going to, okay, you can see all I watch is horse videos. So if we go into a video and start playing it, you see an icon at the top on the tab, right here, sound. So now I can actually mute this tab. So this really works well when you go to web pages that autoplay videos. You can actually mute that right away. You don't have to find the tab. You can just look at the tabs that have the microphones. So I'm in a new tab and I can still control the sound on the other tab without actually needing to switch. So that's pretty shiny. Display settings, whoops. So display settings have changed, and it's for the better. Advanced display settings. So I get a lot more information under advanced. And I go into graphics settings. So now I can set performance per application. So I have set power saving mode, for example, on my GPU for Microsoft Outlook. But I want high performance for these two modern apps for Netflix, because I'm watching educational videos on Netflix. Or I'm binge watching Friends again. Plural site. Yes, educational videos. I need to know how Rachel is going to handle some crisis at her work so I can mirror that at my own place of employment. And also for the Plural site app as well, I want to give priority to this certain set of applications over these other applications, so I can set this here. Another thing that's really shiny, if we go into, for example, program files, we'll pick on 7-zip. 7-zip is fun to pick on. Very nice. If we go to the compatibility tab, we've got some new things here. Change high DPI settings. So now I can start, I can allow Windows to fix things for me. I can override scaling behavior as well by application. Oh yeah.
And while you're at it, can you just bring up the start menu real quick?
Yeah, so a shiny thing about the start menu, thank you for reminding me, with modern applications, Solitaire is always fun. If you go to more, you get more ways to interact with it in that flyout menu under more. So if I went to, for example, remote desktop, go to more here, it's not quite as many things that I can do.
So what's new in that menu is the app settings. I can show you that in a second here, but if you can go over to my laptop for a little bit. Here we go. Some changes that Microsoft are doing around delivery optimization is making sure it's more efficient and giving you a little bit better control, especially through PowerShell to it. You can always go into a box. You can go to settings. You can search for delivery optimization, and you'll find what you got in, basically 1709. Or you have the activity monitor, and you can see that here on the machine that I basically just deployed. I deployed it last night. It already downloaded about 1 gig of updates, and that's just for the native built-in apps that I see in Windows 10. I haven't downloaded any games or anything yet on this one, but it's just the default stuff that is coming down. And if you do a get command in PowerShell, and just do a wildcard on delivery because you're lazy, and try to spell delivery somewhat correctly, it will help a lot. You see you now have 2 different extra PowerShell commands that we had before. So for example, the one that gives you the last month of stuff or updates is now available. So if I run this, I will see the same information here. But this allows you to gather information around your enterprise and simply see, all right, how are my machines doing? How much are they downloading? What comes from peers, etc. You can get a lot of information about this. If you configure this correctly, you can actually get an 80 to 90% reduction of internet traffic going on from your peers. And that's huge. That's big in terms of savings. For example, the default mode that delivery optimization has might not be good if all your machines come out from the same IP address. Because remember that delivery optimization is a cloud service. Every single client participating in sharing content is contacting a server at Microsoft, asking for friends, and they get a list back, and they will contact that friend. And if that list is not optimized for your network, you might be in trouble. So make sure to work that stuff out. I mentioned also the ADK, and there is no official download yet from the new ADK. But as I mentioned, there was some individuals that found the link and tweeted around it, and I was able to snatch it before it expired. So I downloaded it, not here, and well, Windows 80K, whatever version here. So when Microsoft released stuff and they haven't published any documentation, how do you find out what's new in it? Well, I'm pretty old school in that sense, so I use good old WinDiv. That came with probably the Server 2003 resource kit, like 14 years ago, give or take. But there are better ones. Beyond Compare, for example, is better. There is an open source alternative also. But I use the compare directories. So I just compare an old installation with a new installation. And I simply see what's new. So if I click here, click OK, it starts to list all the files that have been changed in this version. So it's not much that is new, but what's interesting is, for example, there are some power views, etc. that you can see power settings. There is a telemetry tool that I could not get to work in this release. It was missing a DLL that was nowhere on that system to be found. So I'm assuming it's waiting for a later release of Windows. That was my idea anyway. But this way you can see that they actually are not doing any much changes to this version of 80K. So that's why I was hopeful that it will actually not break too much stuff. There is a new energy folder with some binaries around that. And there is a lot of additional assessment tests, which is typically what OEMs are using when they're test machines or various things. So that's basically what I found so far in the new 80K. And we already showed settings. What I didn't, this one here. So if you click one of these, like Amy showed you before, when you see you have more options. You have the app settings here, which is new. It doesn't exist in 1709, but you get the equivalent shortcut to the settings page where you have that one. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. We did mention the Insider Preview for Business program. Just do a quick Google search. Insider, I can't even spell. Yeah, for business. Apparently you need to have internet access to be able to do that.
That would be smart.
I could swear I put in the right key here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm old.
I can type it in for you if you
Let's do
need
this.
me to see it. You want me to
do
do
the
it?
Googling, I will do the connecting. So switch over to Amy's
Okay.
laptop and we'll do the magic here. WMP.
So the Windows Insider Program for Business is just a quick Google search away. What you need for this is to have an Azure Active Directory account. You can't log into this program with just a legacy login, or you can't use a regular Microsoft account. If you try to use just a regular like Hotmail account or whatever, then you'll just be thrown into the Consumer Insider Program. But are you ready? Or do you want me to keep explaining?
You can explain.
Okay, so the reason that you'd want to be in the Insider Preview for Business is it's not that it ranks your feedback higher, it's just that it's another feedback channel that's more appropriate for how you're testing. So this would be a good place to say, hey, you know, we don't really want Candy Crush in Windows 10, for sure, but what would be even better would be to say, hey, when my end user logs in and then somebody else logs into this machine, this is the performance change that we're seeing, or these applications no longer work. Your feedback just gets a different signal and it kind of gets lost with all the other feedback that's in the Consumer Insider Program. That's not to say that you shouldn't participate at all if you don't have Azure Active Directory in your environment. Certainly use the regular program as well, but just know that it's just a different route for your feedback.
And I have internet access.
Yay!
Yay! All right, a few things. This platform is doing a lot of changes. A lot of stuff happening.
Yeah, can we go back for a minute? I'm not ready to move on because there's actually a tweet that I wanted to share on some other changes that are coming in 1803.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where it really pays to be on Twitter, even just if you're watching. So this was something that was a little bit of news to me. I've actually professionally been focusing on, like, I think literally everything other than OSD and Windows 10 for the past few months. So I really had no idea that this change was coming. But Niehaus has alluded to new capabilities in 1803 to do more before an operating system upgrade and afterwards, and in favor of servicing, as opposed to our favorite task sequence route. So this is a really good thread to follow as well.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of Intune changes, we listed some of our highlights, things that we like the most about this platform. But the thing with Intune is it changes every single week. Every single week there is a new. So what I found is that when going to the portal and just clicking Intune into the quick start page, you have the what's new in Intune. And this is where you see week by week what's being changed. You can just scroll down and read, and that's just good information right there to see what's happening on that platform.
Yeah, so some of the things worth mentioning really quick, cloud printing came new. So if you wanted to search for how do I enable cloud printing, I highly recommend that you follow the ConfigMgr blog. I have it right here. So Sandy is an MVP in Finland. She actually wrote a guide. If I can get to the top of the page, just go home, on deploying cloud print. And then I actually have the necessary settings available. I don't have the application deployed. If I go into profiles, automatic redeployment is another big one that you should focus on for device recovery, ransomware protection, so that controlled folder access that you see within Windows Defender Security Center. You can also control this as well in Intune. And then, like I said, Cloud Print, I actually don't have this turned on, but you would just create a profile for that. It's under device restrictions, and you enable things there. You can also block versions of Windows 10, so if you didn't want anybody on 15.11 to be able to enroll a device, or if you didn't want anyone on Insider Preview to enroll a device, or anyone that was on 1803 when it's RTM to enroll a device, you can control that as well. Let's talk a little bit about ConfigMgr.
So if you come back to my screen real quick, obviously 1802 is the latest version of ConfigMgr, just being released. It went to the slow ring just a week or two ago, so everybody have it available. Some of the nicer things that were added is a dashboard for co-management and some additional things around scripting, OS deployment, and things like that. So don't have time to go through and demo all that, but do check it out because there are some shiny improvements. For example, that you can get a better sequence template when you're doing your in-place upgrades. And that expands basically when you go to the next technical preview as well, by they adding in a ton of changes, and especially this one. This is a big one. Peer cache has been kind of so-and-so, but they're now adding in actually to allow you to download parts of a file instead of having to download the entire image before they can share with its friends.
That's better.
Also, it's not listed right here, but you also have the client Pixie, etc. that is added.
Yeah, tons of features to test. Let's end this with a demo. I would say one of the more shinier new features that came with ConfigMgr Current Branch 1802 is that in Software Center, you can install multiple applications.
Yeah.
So really what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick, list view is what I meant to do first. So here's my list view. I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to go down here and do Google Earth and Foxit Reader. And if you look over here in this shiny corner, I think you zoom it, I can just install selected, and then they just go in a row and start installing. So it's not like it has to be one at a time where this one installs, and then I go back out and find another one and install it. If I'm in that list view, I can just pick what I want to install and have it run.
Yeah.
And then shiny in Technical Preview is that in Software Center, you can, under the Options tab, so the final tab that you get is to add a link to a website. So you could link your company support portal, or I've done my blog, shiny things like that.
Yeah. So with that, if you can go over to my machine real quick, we do have some resources available, deploymentartist.com, books, videos, trainings, etc. And we recently launched a online training platform. And I see there needs to be a hotfix applied right now. There we go. As I said, onlinetruths.com, we are adding videos on basically a weekly basis to that site. So way more than 2 now.
Yeah, we'll have our autopilot series up there pretty soon, and that'll be free.
Yeah, so yeah, good stuff. So that being said, thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Amy. All right, have a good day. High five.